I think today the finance minister brought us good news. The first point he made, which for me is very important, is that he is not coming to Parliament to ask for additional money. That is to say, the appropriation we made for government in the 2021 budget will be complied with. I think that was very important, but it wasn't just that. Because the revenue and the expenditures have been managed well, he is also not asking Parliament for any additional taxes. That again was very important. And in spite of that, as he indicated, all the major has been preserved. The free SHS has been preserved. The roads agenda has been preserved. The hospital for every district as a project has been preserved. The teacher training...
Almost a year after announcing that, we're now hearing August 17 is the day that the commencement of the construction itself will begin.
Which construction?
The construction of the 111 hospitals that you referenced to in terms of...
Of course, the basic work had to be done. But the important thing is that not only is the minister not asking for more money, not only is the minister saying that I do not want to bring additional taxes, the minister is saying that all these initiatives will be preserved. The school feeding has been preserved, the pension reforms has been preserved, the LEAP program has been preserved, 1D, 1F interventions preserved, NAPCO preserved, planting for food and jobs, and many more preserved. So my summary is this. It cannot be better than this when the finance minister or government comes to Parliament to announce that I am preserving all the important initiatives that are important for people. At the same time, and I am not imposing additional taxes. For me, this summary was very good, and we're grateful to government for this. We will be looking at the statement into greater detail from tomorrow as Parliament, but I think the summary is what I have laid out, and I think it's a good summary.
For the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, if boards are not in place, chief executives are not running affairs, you have no business asking for more money. So for him, it's a sign of how bad things look currently, which is how come the finance minister probably doesn't need more money in order to get the economic actions running.
But well, in March 2021, when we came to this house for the main big appropriation, boards were not in place, deputy ministers were not in place, now deputy ministers are in place. And many chief executives were not in place. And yet, myself, together with Honorable Haruna Idrisu, together with Parliament, we gave the minister considerable amount to spend for 2021. So if he's saying today that he's not asking for more money, and the response we are giving him that it's because boards are in place, we ought to be asking ourselves as members of Parliament that what were we doing in March when we were giving money when there were even no deputy ministers in place. Be reminded that I'm no more in the Ministry of Finance. This is a presentation that the finance minister has made to us as Parliament. We will take time and go into the details, and when necessary, we'll be asking government the questions. But suffice to say that in terms of the broad picture, namely that we're not asking for more money, that we are not asking to impose more taxes, but that we are preserving all the important social interventions for people, it's a good summary. I thank you very much.
But he announced and disclosed that when it comes to the country's debt, between January and now, the debt to GDP ratio actually rose from 76.1% to 77.1%. Yes. Your colleagues on the minority side have repeatedly complained about the debt situation. Isn't it a worrying development that we still see it going up, even as calls are made for a slowdown in how much we are borrowing?
It has been a worrying development. and it has come about for reasons we all know. It is a carryover from 2020, when, because of COVID and because of the shutdown of the economy, revenues hugely underperformed to the tune of about 14 billion Ghana cedis in 2020. You also had additional responsibility to find additional money to contain expenditure that you had not even anticipated at the time you read the 2020 budget. The only remedy, as it has been for every single country across the world, was for the minister to borrow more. And that is why we have seen the rise in public debt. But when I look at the deficit figures for the first half of the year, and I see the government's management of the debt, I am clear that government is very sensitive to what has been happening, and that going forward, we are going to see a much slower debt accumulation. But for COVID, I am sure we will not be looking at these figures. And we should even put this in perspective. What has been the debt figures recorded across the globe? Across the globe, what has been the debt figures? And let's see that all the major social intervention programs, the free SHS, planting for food and jobs, allowances to trainees, and all those many social interventions have been preserved. Ghanaians cannot have had a better day today, and we're grateful to government for that.
Many thanks for joining us. That's the Chairman of Parliament Finance Committee, Kweku Kwarteng. He's also the MP for Boase West there. Deputy Minority Leader James Klucha-Veggie, who is also a former Chairman of Parliament Finance Committee, is joining us for a quick conversation. Were you impressed with what you heard from the Finance Minister? He says he's asking not for more money or anything.
No, I am not impressed at all. In fact, this is not the first time that media review is done without asking for supplementary budget. This is not the first time. So my colleagues should not portray as if it's a novelty. This is not the first time. It's a media review. It's a requirement of the Public Financial Management Act that in July of each year, come and tell Ghanaians that the budget that I want to execute in the course of the year, this is how I have executed that budget so far. Am I on track? Am I off track? That should be the issue. So the issue for, I'm not asking for additional funds. Suddenly they have changed from comparing debt accumulated in Ghana over the years by previous government, previous president. Now, they know that they have lost the debate in that angle, and for that matter, they want to compare it with other Togo, Nigeria, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, or whatever. I'm surprised. So I am not impressed at all in this media review.
He made the point that when you compare figures on inflation, when you compare figures on interest rates and related figures, the levels as we have them today, including the fact that in May 2021, we had the lowest level of inflation, 7.3%. The figures in that regard are far better than existed in the year 2016. He referenced that. Isn't that an indication that they're doing better, at least when it comes to management?
No, let me tell you that in accounting, those of us who are accountants, we call something sunk cost. Sunk cost. The costs have been sunk. You have made that expenditure. So you don't talk about it in relation to what happens in the future and what effect it will have on the life of our people. Now, I am surprised, utterly surprised that the minister will still be referring to 2016, 5 good years after he has taken over. Why didn't the minister compare the current level with 2020, 2019, or even 2018, but has gone back to 2016? No, that should not be the way to go. What is happening now? What is the effect of what you are referring to, that inflation rate has gone down on the life of the people? That is more important.
Speaking of that, the coronavirus alleviation program, the finance minister did disclose that an amount of 600 million cedis was allocated. 520 million of that has been disbursed to individuals to revitalize their businesses, and 299,000 business people have benefited from that.
Yeah, that's 2020. That's what we approved in 2020. So giving us that, it's no news. It's not something that is new, because we sat in a meeting where we took the contingency fund, over $200 million, which should be used to support these small-scale businesses. And then World Bank gave $1 billion. They went to Bank of Ghana to borrow 10 billion Ghana cedis. All these were to support the COVID operation. So giving us that update is not something that we should not be proud of, because it's something that we have done in 2020.
And finally, he made the point that the cedi has been stable over the next few months, and you can expect that stability to continue going forward. And he referenced the point that usually post-elections, we usually see a spike as far as the deterioration of the cedi rate is concerned, and that doesn't happen this year. Do they really deserve credit?
How much is the cedi now? It's more than 6 cedis. You know that? It used to be 5 something. Now it's 6 cedis. So how stable is that? It is not stable. If you want to buy $1 now, you need 6 Ghana cedis, 30 pesos, to be able to buy $1. So the rate is not stable. Cedi is not strong. It's not strong. He should not be coming to tell us everything that we should accept it. Please, Ghanaians, the cedi is not strong.
Many thanks for joining us. That's James Klucha-Vedi. He is actually the Deputy Minority Leader. The Minority Spokesperson on Finance, Kesi Latufosne, is addressing the media. We would get to him in a while for some quick comments, but Dakwa Newman is a Member of Parliament, well, one of our new members of Parliament here. Many thanks for joining us, the MP for Kaikwe South. Your immediate reaction to what we heard from the Finance Minister will be?
Well, I think the mid-year budget review is welcoming. We're all happy because we know that currently COVID has wreaked a lot of havoc. Apart from the loss of lives, the economy has also been dealt a very serious blow. And so this review is very welcoming to us because we hear from the minister, as he told us, that there will be no new introduction of taxes. So when you look at it from that point and you look at the plight of the Ghanaian, you see that we are not further putting the Ghanaian in more of a tight spot. So we're all happy about that. It's welcoming. There's no increase in rates. When you look at the revenue streams, there's no introduction of any new revenue streams. So we're very happy and we're glad.
Do you get a sense the plans as outlined in terms of getting the nation to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic will yield the expected results? The minister made the point that the recovery from the impact has been on since the final quarter of last year. Do these give you hope that that recovery would get better?
Yes, it gives us a lot of hope. We are all aware of the inflation rates. From the end of July 2020, it was at about 14%, maybe 14%, and this year, as at the end of June 2021, we are currently at about 7.8%. This shows that we are on track. The whole idea of this budget that was read in March 2021 was to put the country on track, to help revive the economy. And we can all see that with the figures from the Statistical Service, all indicating that we are on track. What is most important is that we all come together, we work together. It's the implementation, how effectively we implement the budget that will show how the country will recover as quickly as we want it to be. So it all boils down to us. It all boils down to working together. And I believe we are all optimistic that this budget will revive the economy, and the economy will be back on track.
My final question, one thing that's already drawing some reactions on social media, the finance minister announced that when it comes to the National Cathedral, it will be commissioned on the 6th of March 2024, and then he went on to make the point that donations are being invited. The speaker and others should go ahead and donate like 100 cedis each in order to help support the project. The question is, should this be a government priority in these difficult times?
We all understand that things are very, very difficult, but the world doesn't come to a stop because things are difficult. We still press forward, we still move on. It's a project that the government is undertaking, and we all believe that whatever project has started must continue and it must finish. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We are pressing forward, be it the cathedral, be it Agenda 111, everything is on track. And we hope that all these projects will be completed so that the economy is vibrant, so that there's shared prosperity for us all.
Many thanks for joining us. That's the MP for Kaikwe South, Dakwa Newman, there with those reactions to the mid-year budget review statement, that was actually put out by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Let's get a few more reactions. The MP for Yape Kushegu John Jinapor is joining us. What will be your initial reaction to everything you heard from the finance minister?
Well, I thought that something positive will come out for the ordinary worker. People are complaining. Whilst you are giving us an average inflation, the truth is that real goods and services, in terms of what affect the ordinary Ghanaian, is skyrocketing. Cement is skyrocketing. Other products, transportation, and the rest are getting very, very expensive. Already, government has announced a minimum wage of just 4%. 4%. And yet the inflation rate is 8%.
The minister sought to explain that. He said the situation that arose is actually something having to do with the condition of the economy. He made the point that negotiations on the wage was around the fact that you can't give what you don't have. So the government doesn't have enough to give even more.
That means that the economy is struggling. So let's agree to the fact that the economy is struggling. So the minister cannot pay salaries. That is the bottom line. You cannot say that your economy is doing so well. Your economy is booming. Your economy is the best in Africa. And yet you cannot even pay living wage. Living wage. Because when you receive 4% and the rate of inflation is 8%, what it means that at the end of the period, the ordinary Ghanaian is going to suffer because your disposable income and your purchasing power would be reduced. I thought that this was a clear opportunity for the minister to cushion the ordinary worker and the ordinary Ghanaian.
So that if the 4% is inadequate, what would an appropriate possible increment have been for you? I recall the minority leader say at least the workers should get 2% increase. This was something he drew attention to on the floor of the House.
Yes, at least a parity, so that even if they are not better off, they are not worse off. But given the situation now, they are worse off as workers.
My final clarification from you, there was a reference to the efforts that have been made to make the GNPC subsidiary, Exploco, that's into the various drilling of oil and all, more independent, receive boosted funds so that then they can do better in terms of helping Ghana earn more from that particular industry.
We intend to deal with this matter full throttle and head on. Because when they came here during the ACE agreement, we advised government to increase our stake at that time. At that time, it would have been very, very cheap to increase our stake. Government insisted that they would not increase our stake because we weren't interested. Now the company has found oil, the price is shot up, and you are now going to take a stake at a very, very high price. But like I said, we intend to do a full briefing to the press. We'll give you all the figures and show you how this government has hurt the economy, has hurt the people of Ghana by not taking the advice of the minority at that time.
Many thanks for joining us. That's the MP for Yape Kushegu there, John Jinapor. Let's get a few more reactions. Isaac Adongo is Deputy Ranking Member on Parliament's Finance Committee. Thanks very much for joining us. The Finance Minister is not asking for more money. He is not introduced new taxes. This should be good news for Ghanaians, shouldn't it?
You can't ask for what you don't have. So it's very clear. You would have noticed that I had actually advised him to resist the temptation to ask for more money because we just don't have the money. And therefore, if he had asked for more money, it would have simply meant he had to go and borrow more. And already our debt situation is dire. So on that score, he just didn't have a choice but to stay with the current budget. Now, if you look at a lot of the things that he said, again, related to what you have said, he said a lot of things that were not in the original budget. Now that you don't have additional money, you are simply deceiving us because where are you going to fund them from? You get a point. You have not made additional budgetary appropriation, and yet you are promising new things.
Specifically, what are you referring to in terms of the promises of new things?
He went on with the CARES program, and the CARES program largely is capital intensive, and yet your capital budget for the first half is just about 6.3 billion. So where are you going to get the money to fund those programs? But my major problem is that everybody knows that our economy is facing heightened vulnerability. The first challenge of our economy is that we basically are using 91% of our revenue to pay for interest costs or to service our public debt. Now what that means is that government has only 9% to fund other expenditures such as compensation, goods and services, and capex. You can't run an economy like that. This is an economy that is basically gone. That's what it means. Now, if you look at the minister's own statement, he's now saying that in addition to this situation, they are now even going ahead to borrow to now pay part of the interest costs. So our primary balance is now 7.3 billion, What it means that in addition to using revenue to pay for the interest costs, you are borrowing now to pay for additional interest costs. Okay, and when you are borrowing to pay for your interest costs, what we are simply doing is that you are compounding your public debt. That is why we normally have to provide in our budget the payment of interest, so we have only the principal outstanding. Now, in addition to the principal, we are also borrowing to pay the interest costs, which means our public debt is no more just the principal, but also the interest. So you can see the level of heightened vulnerability that we are facing. Now, the other major challenge, particularly in an economy that is actually being classified, and there was a research that was done by HAVEC, the World Bank, and Goldman Sachs that says that Ghana has the highest outstanding Eurobonds to GDP. Now, what it simply means is that the rest of the other countries are borrowing from the Eurobond and they are growing their economies, said that the Eurobond as a proportion of the size of the economy is small. We are borrowing a lot from Eurobond, but then to the size of our economy is small. It means we are borrowing the money and we are not investing the money in areas that will grow the economy.
The defense from the minister and even the chairman of the Parliament Finance Committee is that in these times of COVID-19, there is very little window in terms of raising more funding beyond borrowing, which is how come they've had to do that. And then they make the point that all over the world, the debt rates of all other countries are rising, and Ghana is not an exception. Do you think this explanation is
number one with the highest outstanding Eurobond? And I demonstrated to you before that by 2019, when we didn't have COVID, we're already spending 72% of our revenue on debt service. Okay? I demonstrated to you that by 2016, our economy was spending only 66% of revenue on debt service, which means that we had 34% to cushion us. And for an economy, when we talk about an economy that has buffers and can take shocks, you will notice that the impact of COVID was about 14% additional expenditure. That 14%, if you take it out of the economy that John Mahama left, which was having about 34% buffer, you will still have about 20% to fund. Now, this economy just didn't have a buffer. So with the slightest push, you have no headwinds, and then you are gone. So I am saying that I wanted to see the minister take the appropriate steps to restore credibility to the economy. We have just been downgraded by Fitch, and basically there's nothing in this that suggests that any investor must have confidence.
You think he missed that opportunity to restore confidence in the economy going forward, which is the point you're making? So then,
it is not just,
what do you think the likely impact of that would be?
Not just the opportunity that he missed, but he re-emphasized the deception that this government has been giving to international investors by continuing the conversation of our current sustainable bonds and creating the impression that the current sustainable bond that we are going to borrow is going to be something different. It is going to deal with climate change and the rest. But the truth of the matter is that we did not approve that $2 billion for budgetary support. If you recall, we approved those $2 billion, said that if the market conditions are favorable and we can get cheaper interest rate on the market, we should go and borrow $2 billion to pay off the 2026 bond. So where is this deception coming from? And you saw that he took another step to continue to entrench that deception. My point to investors is that he does not have any approval to borrow to fund the budget beyond what he has already borrowed. This $2 billion is meant per the approval of Parliament only to switch the 2026 Eurobond. What this means is that the minister is intending to borrow the money and divert it to budgetary support. And that is all that he's planning to do. And that will go ahead to worsen our public debt dynamics. And I have not seen, even though I am mentioning to you that our problems and our level of vulnerability is increasing, I am not seeing action to increase revenue. Because the biggest problem we have now, in order to consolidate and in order to get out of the debt trap, is to increase revenue.
He announced the RAISE initiative and said that this is something being done with the Ghana Revenue Authority, which is being rolled out to eliminate sources of revenue leakages.
And yet, what is the performance in the first half of the year? You are losing close to $4 billion, and you are saying we should still continue to rely on this big English? Beyond the English, what is the delivery? The delivery is that you have a major revenue shortfall, okay? And so that cannot be a measure. Tax audit. Listen, show me one budget he has brought here that he has not mentioned tax audit. What has been the revenue? He needs very bold, concrete steps in order to mobilize revenue.
Many thanks for joining us. Isaac Adongo is the MP for Bolgatanga East. He's also the deputy ranking member on Parliament's Finance Committee there, with reactions to the media budget review statement as was delivered by the Finance Minister, Ken Oforiatta. We'll be getting a final comment from one other MP on the majority side in a while, but in summary, the Finance Minister has been making a number of announcements, including announcing that when it comes to the construction of 111 hospitals, the Agenda 111 as it's been described, the paperwork are almost completed on the 17th of August. From then, we would see that construction work on the ground beginning in some of the areas. He's also been announcing that progress is as far as the National Cathedral Initiative is concerned. He gave a date for the commissioning, which he said will be the 6th of March 2024. He's also been announcing that between January and June this year, there's been the maintaining of 11,174 kilometers of trunk roads, as well as 5,389 kilometers of feeder roads and 2,937 kilometers of urban roads. He's also been announcing the 1 million job initiative going forward, which he says is actually hinged on what is described as the youth bank, where young people will be able to get details on available jobs so that then they can get hold of those. He's also been announcing that there will be the national ownership, the National Home Ownership Fund, which would see a situation where people can get mortgage, and then it would be at the interest rate of something between 11 and 12%, compared to the 25 to 26% interest rate as it exists in various banks. And then he's also been announcing that as at June 30th, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund had accrued 57 million Ghana cedis. Out of it, an amount of 52 million cedis had actually been spent. He says with the coronavirus alleviation business support program, there's been the disbursement of 520 million Ghana cedis to 299,000 business individuals. He's been confirming that when you look at the country's debt vis-a-vis the GDP of the nation, it's increased since January up until June from 76.1% to 77.1%. And he's also been announcing that the economy, as it's looking currently, is being better managed and more competently run compared to how it looked in the past as far as management in 2016 is concerned. And he's also been disclosing that the economy is on track to coming back following the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the running of the nation generally. So those have been some of the highlights of the Finance Minister's address to Parliament earlier today, and those are some of the disclosures that he's been making to MPs. Aisha.
And of course, that's my colleague Opoku Gakpo in Parliament with all the details from the document that was presented in Parliament today. And of course, we are still on the pulse. He's been speaking with a number of of the MPs who've been reacting to the minister's document presented today, whilst the NPP believe that the document is super because it will lead to the recovery of our economy. The NDC says they do not have any trust in it because they do not find any hope in there for the youth. But let's look at how it went in Parliament. The Finance Minister started his presentation by touting the strong economic growth witnessed in the first quarter of the year, saying government will continue to pursue fiscal consolidation agenda, inflation rates lower than what it was in 2016. Interest rates, he says, as well as exchange rates, obviously comparing to the performance of the NDC government then. The Finance Minister said, and he quotes, I quote, "We are managing the economy with discipline and competence." He, however, said the recovery is only the beginning, making a reference to the COVID-19 pandemic.
We remain fully committed to achieving the fiscal deficit target of 9.5% of GDP for the year in order to not to derail from the objective of returning to the Fiscal Responsibility Act fiscal deficit and primary balance thresholds of 5% of GDP and positive primary balance, respectively, by 2024. Mr. Speaker, the provisional fiscal data for January to June 2021
showed that total revenue and grants amounted to 28.3 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 6.5% of GDP, against a program target of 32.4 billion Ghana cedis, or 7.5% of GDP. For the same period, total expenditure, including the clearance of arrears, amounted to 50.6 billion, equivalent to 11.7% of GDP, against a program target of 55.1 billion, or 12.7% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal deficit for the period was financed from both foreign and domestic sources. Net foreign financing of 15.2 billion Ghana cedis constituted 68.3% of the total financing and included inflows from Eurobond proceeds. On the other hand, total domestic financing amounted to Ghana cedis 7.1 billion, representing 31.7% of total financing. Public debt development. Mr. Speaker, the total public debt stock as a percentage of GDP increased from 76.1% at the end of December 2020 to 77.1% of GDP at the end of June 2021. This stock includes the financial and energy sector bailouts. Excluding the financial sector bailout, the nominal debt stock as a percentage of GDP is 72.9%. The increase in the debt stock was mainly because of the Eurobond issuance of April 2021, COVID-19 pandemic effect, contingent liabilities, and front-loading of financing to meet cash flow requirements for the first half of this year. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced Africa into responsive to Africa's liquidity and financing need, and is no longer fit for purpose. Africa cannot truly rise unless there's a tectonic shift, Mr. Speaker, in the global financial architecture to support it. To this end, African finance ministers have commenced global advocacy for the IMF to unlend between 25 to 30% of its new SDR 650 billion to Africa. We are also advocating for the establishment of the African Stability Mechanism and the African Liquidity and Sustainability Facility, akin to the European Stability Mechanism. The African Stability Mechanism will protect the continent against external shocks by providing instant emergency access to financial assistance for countries in financial difficulty. The Liquidity and Sustainability Facility could also underwrite a more effective market in African debt that reduces the high liquidity premium African countries pay for sustainability-linked investments. Implementation of Ghana Cares. Mr. Speaker, with every crisis, the need to restructure and diversify the economy becomes imperative.
Notable among the things the finance minister mentioned, he was not in parliament to demand more money, meaning he was not before parliament to present a supplementary budget. Government intends to stay within limits of appropriations approved in March for the year 2021, and there were no new taxes announced. On revenue mobilization, the finance minister pointed out they were going to focus more on compliance with an initiative dubbed Revenue Assurance and Compliance Enforcement Race and Ghana Cares program, vital to economic recovery to generate sustainable jobs for teeming youth.
Mr. Speaker, to sustain the quality of life for Ghanaians during the pandemic, government subsidized the cost for various categories of household and industrial electricity consumption from April to December 2020. Altogether, 4,772,512 customers benefited from the electricity reliefs for the period. The policy, however, continued for lifetime customers from January to March 2021. Mr. Speaker, as part of government's social interventions for supply of free water under the COVID-19 initiative, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources partnered the Ghana Water Company Limited and Community Water and Sanitation Agency to ensure the full realization of the objective. The program started in April 2020 and was extended to June 2021 for domestic consumers whose monthly consumption does not exceed 5,000 liters. In all, over 10 million urban dwellers were supplied with potable water by Ghana Water from April to December 2020. This initiative currently supplies free water to a total of about 6.3 million urban domestic dwellers whose monthly consumption does not exceed 5,000 liters of potable water at a cumulative cost of 836.82 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, CWSA, on the other hand, supplied 17.9 billion liters of potable water to rural and peri-urban population of 5.8 million at a total cost of 100.28 million Ghana cedis between April 2020 and June 2021. The recent experience of the COVID-19 pandemic with its disruptive impact on global and regional value chains has once again highlighted the need to build a transformed Ghana beyond aid. It is for this reason that in November 2020, government launched the audacious 100 billion Ghana COVID-19 alleviation and revitalization of enterprises support, Ghana Cares, Obatampa program. The first phase of the program, also known as the stabilization phase, was implemented between July and December 2020. It alleviated the immediate impact of COVID-19 on our economy and restored normalcy in the lives and livelihoods of Ghanaians through substantially subsidized water and electricity costs, hot meals and food packages distributed to vulnerable and underprivileged persons, increased allocation for the CAB bus scheme to support MSMEs, Ghana cedi 2 billion guarantee scheme established to support large businesses, established skills training programs in collaboration with social partners and faith-based organizations, and passage of urgent legislation to enforce COVID-19 safety protocols.
Let's get more reactions on this. My colleague Opoku Gakpo is on this beats for us.
Aisha, we have the MP for the Nshaiso constituency, Dr. Stephen Amoa, who is also a member of Parliament Finance Committee, joining us as we continue the conversation here. Honorable, thanks very much for joining us. The Finance Minister made the point that, well, he's not asking for more money, no new taxes are being introduced. The reaction from your colleagues on the other side is that it's an indication and a confirmation of their point that the economy is struggling. So then you virtually have absolutely no window to possibly even raise more money to spend. Your reaction will be?
I think my brothers from the other side are only trying to display intellectual dishonesty or unconscious incompetence, because these decisions are not made out of arbitrariness. You need to manage the key performance indicators or parameters of your budget extremely well to make sure that you can stabilize your economy and ensure sustainable growth. We are in a situation where we cannot generate a lot of revenue through taxes simply because productivity is almost on hold. Trade activity is very low, industrial activity is very low because of the COVID economy. In fact, World Bank even predicted negative 3.3% growth, and we made 0.4% growth. So a country that because of this situation, you are not taking enough revenue through taxes, your debt levels are also going up against your GDP. What do? The only way you can do things is to infringe more hardship on the people by taking taxes, which MPP government were not ready to let Ghanaians go through already existing hardship because of this global health crisis. 2, we want to manage and respect our fiscal consolidation. They failed to do that, and because of that, they went to IMF. You remember, for as a policy credibility, and because of that, Ghanaian young child after school had to stay home for 5 years. No public employment was made. Is that what they want us to go? No. The fact of the matter is that we understand how to manage the economy, and even understand how we translate the economy into other areas such as social intervention policies. NDC is known to be social democrat. Tell me any of the pro-poor social intervention policies of national tenacity and credibility that NDC implemented. So they themselves, in their own, contractional fiscal policies as their economic policy base or springboard, they cannot perform. In the economy too, they cannot. What we can assure Ghanaians is that we are ensuring that the hardship will be mitigated. At the same time, we will create jobs. That is why we are raising 100 billion, you know that, for care. Obatampa. And that project is going to ensure commercial farming to attract the youth, engineering, ICT, and also implement government flagship programs. And these are all shown clearly. Go and look at even the banking sector. Interest rate has been reduced from almost 40% to about 20%. Policy rate from about 25.5 to almost 10%. T-bills has been reduced drastically from about 22.5% to almost 14% per annum. These are all signs. Inflationary rate still remaining single digit. It shows that this government is even fantastic.
Are the ordinary people feeling this in their pockets? As is usually the question that comes up.
Take your child free to school, you don't feel it. If interest rate has been reduced, cost of borrowing in Ghana by about almost 18%, you say you don't feel. How do you want to feel it? I'm asking you. And because of the hardship, we give freebies, water, freebies, electricity. Your child is also going to school free. We have raised 100 billion to help people get technical skill acquisition and co. What else? A situation where we even grew beyond World Bank's target. My brother, there is nowhere in this world that any other person who but for intellectual dishonesty or showing his ego trips or unconscious incompetence will not allow this government. The NDC government, even without the COVID situation, between 2016, 2008 and 2016, increased our debt portfolio by over 1,140%. It has never occurred in our history. There was no COVID. Go and check. There was no COVID, but almost even policy rate, the government or interest rate, that time is bigger than the lending rate today. And these are the people talking. They have no clue.
One final point that Isaac Adongo raised that I would seek clarity from you on. You made a point about the CARES program and the new initiatives that are being raised to help deal with the economic situation and create jobs, even in the light of the COVID-19. We also know that even beyond that, there is the National Home Ownership Fund, which the finance minister announced. Isaac Adongo makes the point that we heard the minister say no more money is being demanded for. But here lies the case. Beyond what was outlined in the budget in 2021 March, new initiatives are being rolled out. New announcements are being made of different things, including the additional investment in the CARES program that would be made. Where will the money come from if you are not seeking approval from Parliament to spend more money?
But the fact that government has not introduced new taxes doesn't mean we don't have generation of revenue. Already there's existing processes. We just had our year budget, and in the budget it was approved here in the House, including my own brother Adongo, 100 billion for some of these activities. So why is he saying this? You see, one thing about the NDC, I think they are having credibility issues when it comes to being sincere, respectfully. They are my brothers. The same people complaining that inflationary rate is now 8%. We only increase minimum wage by 4%. When they were in power, inflation rate was 15.4%. Meanwhile, minimum wage was 8%. So the fact is that if Ghanaians can be extremely quiet and observing, NDC, they have no alternative. Look, when they ask them, what's your alternative? They say revenue. Alternative, revenue. Have you heard this before? The alternative to harmonize the key performance indicators of our budget, i.e. your debt levels, your fiscal deficit and stuff like that, they are saying what? Revenue, revenue, revenue. How could this be alternative? One problem with them is that instead of them sitting down and be honest with them and have the nation at heart and plan well, all that they are interested in is how can we use communist inferior tactics to come to power? Because how can you say that we are doing something wrong when yours was even worse and you had no COVID situation? There is hardship, we agree. But the hardship is as a result of an uncontrollable factor. Look, even our PFM Act, Public Financial Management Act, 2016, Act 921, Section 18, what does it say? 3 conditions: war, natural disaster, health epidemic. Our fiscal rules and policies must be in consultation, be even suspended. So even this is an outlier situation that nobody can analyze this against other factors when things were normal. We are not in normal times, but we are doing normal things. That is what they have to know.
Many thanks for joining us, Dr.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you for this platform.
The MP for the Insha constituency. He's also a member of Parliament's Finance Committee there with those reactions to the development here in Parliament, even after the Minister for Finance delivered his mid-year budget review statement. And so we're expecting that from tomorrow all through to Monday and Tuesday, the House will continue its debate as far as this particular statement that's been laid in the House is concerned. We're also expecting that without necessarily offering any specific approval, MPs will be commenting on what they heard from the Finance Minister today, even as the House prepares to take its break. Aisha.
And that was Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, who's monitoring events in Parliament for us. You heard there he spoke with Dr. Stephen Amwa, who is a member of the Finance Committee and MP for Inshae. So he's been trying to defend issues raised by Honorable Adongo, that even though the government is not asking for a supplementary budget, government is introducing new initiatives. Where will the money come from? And he's been trying to justify that even though they're not asking for a supplementary budget, there are internally generated funds that could be used to fund some of these projects. But the Finance Minister, he says unemployment exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic requires an urgent action. And so there will be new programs to address it.
As part of measures to mitigate the impact of unanticipated future socioeconomic crises such as COVID-19 pandemic on Ghanaian workers, government announced in the 2020 mid-year review of fiscal policy the establishment of the National Unemployment Insurance Scheme and training-retraining programs as part of the Ghana Cares Obatampa program. Mr. Speaker, we are currently in the design phase of the National Unemployment Scheme, and key stakeholders are being consulted. The consultations will be scaled up to include more stakeholders and technical experts to ensure that the project design suits the Ghanaian labor market. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of the training and retraining component of the program has been accelerated. Government, together with the social partners, have decided to pilot the national training and retraining program in the two sectors that were mostly affected by the pandemic, namely the private education sector and the hospitality and tourism sector. The compacts which have been signed between the Ministries of Finance and a number of MDAs specify specific results to be achieved by the MDAs and the catalytic resources to be provided by the Ministry of Finance. Each compact includes a clear results tracking framework with further releases of funds tied to performance. I'm happy to report that this exciting performance-based arrangement is up and running. The catalytic resources have started flowing, and the MDAs are energized and getting on with their activities. The compacts ensure effective and timely delivery of targets under Ghana Cares for 2021. Mr. Speaker, government is demonstrably committed to the nation's economic recovery and eventual transformation as envisioned by the Ghana Cares program. We are innovating new ways to get results. We are engaging all actors to secure keen participation and involvement. We are aggressively mobilizing resources to deliver the program. The recent urgency brought to bear by our youth is appreciated. We will continue to prioritize the opportunities as a means for this transformation journey. Mr. Speaker, despite the generally strong performance of our economy in recent decades, the issue of unemployment and jobs for our youth, who constitute close to 71% of our population, persists. This situation has been exacerbated by the pandemic, by the impact of this pandemic. Taking the lesson from our recent past, we are deliberately intervening to avoid a jobless economic growth and recovery. Mr. Speaker, at a strategic level, our comprehensive and holistic response to the employment and jobs issue remains anchored on the private sector. It is for this reason that government's recovery program transformation agenda is easing the constraints of the private sector to enable them to expand and provide jobs for the youth. A recent survey indicated that about 50% of local employers report misalignment of or inadequacy of skills in the market. It also reports that at least 50% of new tertiary institutions entrants are enrolling in programs in sectors with no or little growth in labor market. Mr. Speaker, in response to this, we are strengthening the links between education and job market stakeholders. We are also revitalizing the skills development initiatives and the Ghana Enterprises Agency, NEIP, YEA, and CODVET. We are also feverishly working on a scheme that enables the private sector to train new recruits entrants at a subsidized rates by government. Mr. Speaker, our intention of building an entrepreneurial nation is already known. We aim to empower our youth to be at ease and venture into businesses. The cleanup of the financial sector and the invigoration of the entrepreneurial ecosystem is expected to help remove the binding constraints of financing and market linkages for our daring youth. Our focus will remain on establishing a strong value system for entrepreneurship to flourish. Mr. Speaker, recognizing that more needs to be done, government is today announcing a 1 million jobs initiatives to aggressively respond to the needs of the country. This is to promote growth in SMEs, support new ventures, and stimulate innovation and startups.
The minister says the second phase of the coronavirus alleviation program business support scheme to be implemented, and he says the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic presents uncertainties for global economic recovery, and Ghana is not spared. So government will provide $25 million seed fund towards producing vaccines domestically. This will be achieved through the establishment of a National Vaccine Institute.
Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund was set up under Act 1013 to receive and manage contributions and donations from well-meaning individuals, groups, and corporate bodies. As at 30th June 2021, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund had received a total amount of $57.15 million in cash donations. These donations were made between the period April 2020 and March 2021. As at 30th June 2021, the fund had disbursed an amount of 52.5 million Ghana cedis for various programs, as well as procurement of items. Mr. Speaker, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, government has developed and implemented a number of interventions expressed in the National COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan and the National Strategic COVID-19 Response Plan, July 2020 to December 2024. Mr. Speaker, these plans and related interventions provided a comprehensive framework to mobilize and disburse funds which have proved vital to the success of the national containment and case management measures. Since Ghana recorded its first 2 cases on 12 March 2020, the Ghana Health Service has conducted 1,416,952 tests as of 25th July 2021, with a cumulative positivity rate of 7.3%. Mr. Speaker, Ghana implemented the COVID-19 vaccination campaign as part of the containment strategy and has developed the National Deployment and Vaccination Plan. It is planned that 20 million Ghanaians will be vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity. Mr. Speaker, we have upgraded our national, regional, and district cold chain facilities to widen our access to vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna that require -70 degrees centigrade cold chains. These include 16 ultra-low cold freezers, 58 units of ultra-low freezers, 50 normal vaccine refrigerators, 300 boxes to be filled with ice packs, 300 ice pack freezers, 10 cold chain vans, and 120 temperature monitoring devices. Government has also committed to providing seed funding of $25 million towards the development of the country's capacity to produce vaccines domestically. This will be achieved through the establishment of a National Vaccine Institute.
Finally, let's hear the Finance Minister on security and what plans he has for the sector.
Even though Ghana remains a pillar of stability in the region, the sub-regional securities, and particularly from Mali and Burkina Faso. In particular, the southward drift of the activities of violent extremists, terrorists, and pirates in the Gulf of Guinea have become more widespread, frequent, and deadly with the underlying dynamics. Mr. Speaker, it becomes imperative that we address the existing vulnerabilities and intensify preemptive, preventive, and countermeasures. Mr. Speaker, the government has revamped and retooled the Ghana Boundary Commission since the beginning of 2021 to undertake a strategic mandate of determining and demarcating the land boundaries and delimitation of maritime boundaries of Ghana in accordance with accepted principles of international law. Mr. Speaker, we are also working further to retool the Intelligence Initiative, which serves as a coordinated and intelligence sharing platform of neighboring countries. Mr. Speaker, we'll come to this honorable House in support of the security of Ghana.
And that was the Finance Minister who delivered the mid-year budget review in Parliament. We're still live on The Pulse. Remember, we're streaming live on all our social media platforms. Tweet at us at #The Pulse. My personal handle is at Nana Aisha. We'll take a break. We'll bring you more shortly.